Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Clark, here with you again. We're going to talk about preventing poultry diseases. I'm the Extension Poultry Health Veterinarian and the Associate Center Director for Poultry Extension with the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture with the Cooperative Extension Service. And I'm going to talk to you about preventing poultry diseases. Biosecurity. You've heard me use this word. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it is, why we do it, and how we do it. What is it? Well, any and all procedures that we can do to prevent or lessen the introduction of a disease organism into a flock of birds. It encompasses rules, regulations, physical procedures. It encompasses an attitude. It encompasses education. It encompasses possibly a cultural shift. It should become routine. It should become so routine for you and your birds that you really don't even think about it. You just do it. But it shouldn't be something that is so difficult to do that you won't do it. I use these three statements here to talk about biosecurity. Communication, understanding, and attention to detail. These are the things. You have to be able to communicate what you're wanting done. You have to be able to understand what's being communicated to you. And it's that paying attention to detail that can make all the difference in the world. So what are we trying to protect against? Well, everything, to sum it up. There are bacterial diseases, and I covered some of those in an earlier video. There are viral diseases. There are fungal diseases, protozoal diseases, and then there's parasites, external and internal. Those are all the things we're trying to protect against. Amazingly enough, all of these are fairly small. In fact, they range from microscopic to some that you can see that are still pretty tiny. If they were as big as a basketball or a soccer ball, it would be a whole lot easier to protect against them, but they're not. Key thing to remember is that pathogens all decline in the environment over time. Here's some examples. The infectious bursal disease, it can persist in the environment for months. Coccidiosis for months. Influenza for days. Cholera for weeks. Coryza, hours. Mycoplasma, hours to days. Salmonella, days. Newcastle, days to weeks. So we've got pathogens here that could persist in the environment, everything from hours to months. Why are we doing all these things? Well, we want to reduce the risk of spread of an infectious disease. We were trying to keep it out of the flock. It's a good business practice. It costs you money if you don't do it. A disease outbreak costs you money. What's the goal of biosecurity in the poultry industry? Well, it's to protect the complex. That's a grouping of farms. It's to protect the farm. It's to protect the individual poultry house from introduction of a disease-causing agent. It's to protect other farms, your neighbors, other complexes, other companies from disease-causing agents that might leave your premise, and it's to contain that disease outbreak. How do we do it? Okay, some points to consider. Building, construction, and maintenance. Keeping out those wild birds, bird-proofing that. Vermin-proofing it, keeping out rats and mice. I've listed dogs, cats, livestock. Here in the United States, raccoons and skunks. Whatever is in your area wildlife, you want to keep them out of there. Entrances, we will have a concrete apron there. We want to have an area where we can have a sanitation barrier in the biosecurity room. Impervious surfaces. Clean feed and water. You have good feed bins, augers, hoppers, water supply and lines and drinkers. Around the periphery, keeping all those things that could harbor vermin, such as tall grass and debris, standing water for mosquitoes and insects, keeping all that away. So basically having good construction of the building and good maintenance so that we don't have areas where things from the outside can get in. How do we do it? Well, we want to restrict entry of new birds into the flock. You don't want to have a home flock and take birds back and forth. We don't want new birds coming into that flock. We want to restrict the access by unauthorized people. Only those that need to be in that house on that farm should be there. And we'll have access zones and points where that can be controlled. Follow the entry procedures will reduce the risk of exposure to the infected material. For example, at the entrance of the farm, a biosecurity sign, as we have here. Here you can see the steering wheel. At the entrance to the farm, and then at each poultry house, on the door that you're going in, saying, it says biosecure area, authorized personnel. We want to make sure that all farm personnel have dedicated shoes and clothing that they can wear on the farm, and that stays on the farm. That they have any vehicle they use stays around that area, or it's disinfected after it leaves the farm and before it comes back on the farm. You want to change footwear, disinfect that footwear. It's best to have that change of footwear and disinfect in between the houses. And then sanitize your hands. Visitors, any visitor that comes, first off, restrict those visitors. You don't want them to be around any other birds and come to your birds. We typically say 72 hours, depending on what the company policy is, maybe longer. You want to equip them with a hairnet and coveralls, shoe covers, or rubber boots, gloves, and hand sanitizer before you let them on the farm. They need to park off the farm and walk into the area, signing in as they come in so you know where they've been, and equip them with protective equipment. Designated entry and exit point. And here you can see is the door. Here's a little close-up. There should be some type of disinfection station and footwear at the door. Now, if you look right here, we don't have one. If you look at this picture, this is a distance picture of this doorway. There is the disinfectant pan right there. It doesn't do any good way over here. You need it right here at the entryway. If you're going to use those, or if you use the Danish method, the bench method in here, then you'll change into boots before you're going in there. But again, single entry point. Hand sanitizer. Use it at each house upon entry and exit. And there's various types. There's gels, there's foams. Cannot stress the importance of learning the symptoms of disease. And I went over all of these. I'll go over them again when we talked about the diseases. Increased mortality. If the birds aren't eating, if their appetite's down, diarrhea in there, coughing, you may have to go out and check your birds at night and sit while it's quiet and listen for the coughing or sneezing. Lameness, depression, decreased production, anything unusual happening, blisters, swellings, high number of all of these things. Learn the symptoms. And you're going to have to learn the behavior of the birds as a flock and individually, and then you may have to examine a bird. Some biosecurity essentials. Keep those poultry houses locked. Make sure you have separate clothing for on-farm use. Restrict those visitors to a minimum. Depending on what company policy is, you want to insist on a clothing change, possibly shower in, shower out. But some type of clothing change, either putting on some coveralls over their clothing or changing clothes to on-farm clothing. All machines, vehicles, and equipment, anything coming to that farm should be disinfected upon entry to the farm. Some sort of disinfectant for shoes and foot. We call them foot and shoe bath, containing a disinfectant. This can be liquid, it can be dry. We demonstrated for you on a different video where we spray the boots and then we have a dry disinfectant. Proper disposal of dead birds. Make sure there's a restricted sign at the entrance of the farm and at the house, and enforce that restriction. Make sure there's a physical separation of the poultry from the threats. Cleanliness is essential. Keep things clean. Practice an effective insect and rodent control program. Practice all in, all out. All those chickens go in there and they all leave at the same time. Maintain strict isolation from visitors, animals, and wild birds. In other words, don't go visit small flocks in your neighborhood and then go visit your birds. Proper clean out and disinfection between flocks. This should be in accordance with company policy. Proper procedural security for movement of people and animals. Most of these things will be part of a company policy and plan that you will be asked to follow. Now, make sure everyone knows and follows the rules and protocols. That's part of biosecurity and best farm practices. Make sure that every employee you have knows what those are and follows them properly. Make sure that there's on-farm training. And it's really not going to hurt anything to do this on-farm training periodically. Maybe it's important you do this, say, quarterly or twice a year. Have some sort of standard operating procedure that you follow. Develop an action plan. Now, what do I mean by that? That's a plan of action in case something goes wrong. You should have a plan developed. And by all means, don't just keep good records, keep excellent records. Again, communication, understanding, and attention to detail. It's this attention to detail, the understanding of what you're doing, and everyone's employed to understand what they're doing, and proper communication to all those involved. This is an essential part of biosecurity. Now again, to wrap this up, biosecurity, that's the various protocols and practices that are designed to decrease the risk of the introduction of a disease, a pathogen, onto the farm, or spread of that to other farms. It's a vital tool that you can use in the prevention of diseases in poultry flocks. Not just what we many times think of as very serious diseases, because in essence any disease can be serious enough, but all the diseases. Use biosecurity to protect your flock. Use it to protect your neighbor's flock.